there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I've got 3 cards to share with you that I created using the new Simon Says Stamp Frightfully Fun stamp set. So getting started here on card number 1, I'm working on a Nina Desert Storm card base. And I'm going to stamp directly on that base. I'm using this skeleton figure and stamping that out using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. So I started out by stamping him in the center there, and my original plan was to create 3 in a row and just sort of make them like they were dancing, and then I got the idea to flip the other 2 upside down just for something different. So I went with that and added 1 on either side of him. Here I've grabbed my Prismacolor colored pencils and I'm just going to do some really simple coloring. I used a very light gray to do the actual skeleton, a black for the hat, and then I started off using a red for the sash on the hat and the bow tie, and then I decided I should use orange since this is a Halloween card. So I did go back then and just erase away some of that red and mixed in some orange over top. So I got a really nice rich sort of red-orange color for those. Next, I grabbed a scrap piece of MFT's Tangy Orange cardstock, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, "I feel it in my bones," using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I went ahead and trimmed that down, and I left probably 1/4 of an inch all the way around that sentiment. Here I'm adding some pop-up squares behind that. I'll go ahead then peel away the backing, and I'm going to place that in the center underneath my skeletons. For the inside here, I'm working on a Nina panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm using the sentiment, "It's going to be a great Halloween," and then I grabbed that skeleton and just have him sort of dangling down from the top there, waving. I again grabbed that extra piece of Tangy Orange cardstock, trimmed off 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to add that along the bottom for a little pop of color. I'll go ahead then and trim off the excess, and then I added a little bit of art glitter glue behind there, and I'm going to place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 1. So for card number 2, I'm going to do a little bit of stenciling here. I grabbed a stencil from my stash. This is Crafter Workshop Mini Tile Texture Pattern, and I'm going to place that down on top of a piece of Pebbles pattern paper. This has a really cool looking skeleton pattern all over the back of it. It sort of looks like wallpaper. That skeleton is very subtle. So I'm using some Ranger texture paste, and I'm just going to spread that all over my stencil. And then once I'm finished here, I will go ahead and remove that tape and peel up the stencil to reveal the design. This is always my favorite part. So while I'm letting that dry, I'm going to stamp out this coffin stamp with the puppy dog, and I'm again using my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I will go ahead then and heat set that before I take my Copics to it. And I've left in the full Copic coloring so you can see how I got the wood grain texture for the coffin. I'm using 3 colors for the coffin, just doing lots of layering and just tiny little straight flecks to try and get a wood grain pattern, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. And then I will take that darkest color and also create a shadow underneath the bars that are going across the top. So I went ahead then and fussy cut out that image and trimmed out my background pattern paper to 4 by 5¼ but I felt like it needed something a little bit more to create that scene. So I've also grabbed the pumpkin from the stamp set. I'm going to stamp that out a few times, and then I will take my Copics and color those in as well. I did then go ahead and also fussy cut out those pumpkins. Here I'm adding some Scotch foam tape behind my coffin, and then I'm going to work to put those together in a scene. And I spent a lot of time fiddling around with those pumpkins, so I did sort of cut that out. But here I've again grabbed my art glitter glue. I'm going to go ahead and paste down that background. And then here I'm just working around a little bit to get my scene where I want it. I ended up sort of adding the coffin so it was almost right in the center, and then balancing that out with the puppy on one side and the pumpkins on the other side. And I did pop all of that up as well on some foam tape. That very first pumpkin is on a double layer of foam tape. For the inside, I decided to stamp directly on the card base, and this is made from MFT's Orange Zest, and I went with the sentiment, "You're so awesome, it's mummy-nificent." And And that will complete card number 2. So our final card for today is pretty simple. I took this pattern paper and trimmed it down to 4x5 1/4. Then I'm going to go ahead and add some art glitter glue, and I'll place that on the top of my card base. This card base is made from MFT's Purple Rain cardstock. Next, I grabbed from my stash one of these web doilies. I'm going to add a little bit of glue in the center just to make sure I've got that stuck down nice and tight. And then once I have it in place, I'm just going to lift up the edges, and at each of the points of the web, I'll add a little dot of glue to make sure I keep that down nice and tight. I went ahead and trimmed off the excess, and I did save the little half circle of web that was hanging off the end there. Here I've taken this piece of the Pebbles ephemera with the witch's portrait on it. I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of that, and I'll place that right in the center of the web. Next, I grabbed some scrap Nina cardstock, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment "Which Way to the Candy." I trimmed that down pretty thin. It's about 1/4 inch wide, and I did do a fishtail end on one edge of it. I'm going to again add some art glitter glue behind there. I'll place that down, and then I trimmed off the excess, stopping there at the pattern paper. For the inside, I went with the sentiment "Happy Halloween." And again, this is on a Nina panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4. And then I took that leftover piece of web. I'm adding some little tiny glue dots all around the back of that. I'm going to place that on the bottom of my panel. I'll add some glue to the back of that and place it on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 3. Here are a couple of close-ups of the cards we created today. You'll find additional photos as well as a full list of supplies at my blog post, linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.